My name is Lillian Radley. I'm 30 years old. And this is the story of how I stopped being invisible and made my family finally see me. I stared at the crooked yellow post-it stuck to the corner of my computer screen. Lillian, handle the furlough files this morning. Pick up Dad's suit. Confirm Charlotte's caterer. That was it. No greeting, no sign-off. And definitely no birthday wish. I leaned back in my chair. The ceiling lights buzzed faintly above me, their white glare doing nothing to warm the hollow feeling growing in my chest. I had worked here, at Radley & Associates, our family-run investment firm, for 8 years straight. No holidays. No real breaks. Not even a full weekend off in 2 years. They called it a legacy. But I had no title, no shares, no salary boost. I was the eldest daughter doing everyone else's errands. Usha, my coworker and the only real friend I had at the office, walked in holding a tiny cupcake with a single silver spiral candle. Tell me you're not working on your birthday again. I smiled, a weak one. At least someone remembered. Usha's eyes narrowed at the post-it note. Are you serious? On your 30th? They still have you running dry cleaning errands like you're the receptionist? I didn't respond. She already knew the answer. Last year on my birthday, my mother, Cynthia Radley, hosted a lavish cocktail evening for a client from Manhattan. I had gently reminded her, maybe too gently, that it was also my birthday. She had laughed and said, "You're 29, Lillian. Who still throws birthday parties?" Before I could explain how birthdays aren't about parties but about acknowledgement, about being seen, the office door swung open. Red stilettos clicked sharply against the hardwood. Charlotte. My younger sister. The heiress apparent. She never knocked. She walked in like she owned every room, every conversation, every single detail of our lives. Grace, she said, calling me by my middle name like she always did when she was about to be dismissive. Dad wants the furlough file before noon. Mom needs you to double-check the floral setup for tonight. Then she caught sight of the cupcake. Her nose wrinkled. Oh, is it someone's birthday? Usha, now visibly steaming, nearly choked on her coffee. Are you serious right now? Charlotte squinted. Wait. Grace's? What is it, 30, right? She tossed the question like she was guessing the weather. I nodded. Saying nothing felt louder. Charlotte blinked, then smiled blandly. Well, happy birthday. We should totally do dinner sometime. She waved, turned, and strutted out. The scent of her overpriced perfume lingered longer than her sincerity. The door clicked shut. I sat in silence. For the past 2 years, I'd been quietly selling every gift they ever gave me. Unworn designer shoes. Dresses 2 sizes too small. Jewelry with fake stones. A watch Dad gave me that still had a corporate sponsor's logo etched on the back. I hadn't sold them for money. I sold them because they weren't gifts, they were leftovers from someone else's life. And the money? It had grown. I opened my banking app. My chest tightened slightly. It was more than enough. Enough to disappear. Enough to start again. I turned my laptop toward Usha and pulled up the homepage of the Malaya Shores Resort. Villas perched on stilts above turquoise water. Private butlers. Glass floors that showed the reef below. Her eyes widened. This place is insane. I clicked book now. Without a word. Last year, I'd stayed late fixing Charlotte's Q4 projections, the ones she hadn't even reviewed, while my mother toasted champagne with strangers and posted glittery photos to Instagram. She captioned one, welcoming the Manhattan elite to the Radley family. I was in the background. Literally. Blurred in the far right corner of the photo. Holding a tray of files. This year, I would not be blurred. I would not be ignored. I would not be remembered 3 days later when someone needed their laundry folded. I made the bookings under my grandmother's maiden name, Holden. Grace Holden. She used to whisper to me, "You don't have to be successful to be worthy. You were born enough." The last person who ever said something like that died when I was 17. I encrypted all my files and scheduled my out-of-office message to activate the minute I boarded my flight. I sent the furlough folder to Charlotte. The password? My birthday. Let them remember it for once. At 4 a.m., a black car pulled up outside my apartment. The driver wore white gloves. He bowed. "Ms. Grace Holden?" I nodded. No Radley. No Charlotte. No mother, no father. Just me. The plane lifted into the dark California sky. By the time we landed in Maui, I'd received 9 missed calls. All ignored. A private boat carried me across crystalline waters. At Maluya Shores, Marcus, my personal butler, bowed and handed me a cold towel and fresh coconut. "Miss Grace, it's a pleasure to serve you." That afternoon, I stretched on a sun-warmed chaise, cocktail in hand. I wore sunglasses I'd bought using the money from selling a pair of heels Charlotte left in my trunk 2 years ago. I took a picture, legs crossed, ocean in view, gold sunlight caught in my glass. I posted it with one line. "Sometimes you have to disappear to be seen." 10 minutes later, 3 missed calls from Mom. 2 from Dad. 1 frantic message from Charlotte. I locked my phone and let the waves do the talking. By the second morning, I had memorized the sound of the ocean against the villa deck. The rhythm was steady, unlike the jagged noise of deadlines, demands, and disappointments that had defined my life for the past decade. I didn't wake up to a phone alarm. Marcus had placed a warm towel and jasmine tea on the terrace table before sunrise. I stepped out, barefoot, and sat cross-legged on the mat he had rolled out for yoga. No meetings. No tasks. No invisible chains. I breathed in salt air and eucalyptus. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to earn my right to exist. Back in California, it was nearing midnight. My phone, still flipped face down, buzzed again. I glanced at the screen. "Mom, Charlotte said you ran off. Call me immediately." "Dad, where's the furlough file? This is not funny." "Charlotte, Grace. This isn't cool. We're freaking out." I didn't reply. Instead, I posted another photo, this time of breakfast. Dragon fruit carved into flower petals, banana pancakes with gold leaf flakes, a cappuccino in a stone cup. The caption was just 2 words, "Welcome to freedom." By noon, Usha messaged me on Signal. Her text read, "Usha, they're losing it. Charlotte just tore apart your desk looking for your laptop. Your mom told HR you've gone rogue. Dad had the IT team scan your access history. LOL. What did you do?" I smiled, half amused, half vindicated. I typed back. "Me, nothing. I just left." Charlotte messaged again an hour later, "Grace. Please. Dad is furious. What's the password to the file?" I stared at the screen. Then responded. "Me, it's my birthday." Typing bubbles appeared. Then disappeared. Then reappeared. "Charlotte, June, no. Wait, was it April?" I said nothing. Not a word. Just closed the app and walked to the edge of the villa deck, letting the warm sea breeze wrap around me. By day 3, the panic had evolved into hysteria. Violet, the company's head accountant and one of the few decent people there, emailed me from her private server. "Violet, Grace, I know I shouldn't be saying this, but thank you. What you did. It's not crazy. It's brave." Attached to her message was a file, Radley_payroll_2019-2024.xlsx. My heart pounded. I opened it. And I stopped breathing for a moment. My name was there, tucked between lower-tier analysts and interns, with a salary that hadn't changed in 3 years. No bonuses. No equity. Charlotte, on the other hand? Double my salary. Image consulting fees. Clothing allowances. Spa reimbursements. I scrolled further. Marketing budget allocations. Cynthia Radley. First-class flights. Beauty appointments. Client dinners that were really weekend getaways. Tens of thousands of dollars in executive appearance budgets, all tagged as operational costs. At the bottom of the spreadsheet, Violet had left a final note. I've already reported this to the Department of Labor. If I disappear from the system, you'll know why. 3 hours later, I received a text from Usha. Usha, they just walked Violet out of the building. Your mom called her a disloyal traitor in front of HR. She didn't flinch. She left a printed copy of the salary report on Cynthia's desk. The injustice scorched something inside me. Not just for me, but for every person that office had ground down and discarded because they didn't match the Radley brand. That evening, Marcus brought me an envelope. Sent from the airport, Miss Grace, he said with a soft bow. Inside was a pencil sketch of me, sitting under the terrace awning, book in hand, hair tossed by the wind. At the bottom, freedom looks good on you, S. Seth. My older brother. He'd always been the family ghost, drifting in and out of the picture. He worked in Seattle, had left the company years ago after a screaming match with Dad about moral corrosion and image over ethics. He was the dreamer, the rebel, the one who saw through the illusion and walked away. And now he was coming back. The next morning, just after dawn, I heard footsteps on the deck. I turned. Seth stood there, backpack over his shoulder, sunglasses hooked on his collar. You finally did it, he said. I walked straight into his arms. That night, we sat under the stars on the balcony, drinking crisp white wine and watching the waves. I told him everything. From the cupcake to the file password. From Violet's bravery to Charlotte's meltdown. When I finished, Seth was quiet. Then he asked one question. Ready to push a little harder? I nodded. If not now, then when? He opened his laptop and pulled up a secure folder. Inside, a full dossier. Every unethical expense. Every falsified vendor. Every proof of salary discrimination and falsified internal reporting. He'd been building it for months. You were the match, he said. I just collected the wood. Seth and I spent the next 36 hours building something neither of us had ever imagined we'd be capable of. While Maluya's breezes whispered of peace, we quietly engineered a storm. In the resort's co-working lounge, overlooking the reef-lined horizon, we sat side by side, my laptop open with spreadsheets and screenshots, his with encrypted legal templates and contact lists. Seth had kept tabs on Radley and Associates from a distance ever since he'd left. What he showed me now stunned me. They've been cooking the books, he said, voice low but steady. Not in the criminal way, yet. But there's a pattern. Creative accounting. Brand incentives that are really personal purchases. And marketing expenses that somehow benefit no one but Charlotte and Mom. He clicked into a spreadsheet labeled, Family Privilege versus Staff Performance. Column after column showed just how deep the rot went. People like Violet, who'd worked for over 10 years, had lower raises than Charlotte's monthly wellness stipend. Bonuses were handed out based on proximity to my mother, not performance metrics. You're not the only one they've stepped on, Seth said. But you're the only one who left a door open wide enough for the rest to follow. That afternoon, I posted a short video clip to my private Instagram. It was just a silent pan over the resort's infinity pool, sunlight dancing on the surface. But the caption said it all. What they didn't want became my freedom. By morning, my inbox was flooded. Former interns. Fired associates. Women who had been told they were too much or not polished enough. Older employees who were quietly edged out in favor of youthful image rebranding. They all messaged me with one shared theme. Thank you. We didn't think anyone would ever say it out loud. And then came Violet's update. A voice note. I received confirmation from the Department of Labor this morning. They've launched a formal inquiry. It's real, Lillian. It's happening. I sat back in my chair, heart racing. Later that night, as sunset washed the villa in orange light, Marcus brought a new tray, ginger tea, light pastries, and a note. Meeting scheduled. 6 p.m., Thursday. Virtual board session. Request to discuss Radley restructure. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I messaged the Radley Executive Board's assistant and confirmed I would join the call. I didn't use my work email. I used the new one Seth had created, grace.holden@malioinvestments.com. 2 hours before the meeting, I sat on the deck in a sand-colored suit, simple jewelry, bare feet. I wasn't dressing for them anymore. I was dressing for me. Seth poured me a glass of lemon water. You sure you're ready? He asked. I nodded. They took 30 birthdays from me. They don't get one more minute. When the virtual boardroom opened, I clicked join. And there they were. My mother, in a champagne silk blouse, lips tight. My father, dark eyes narrowed in suspicion. Charlotte, arms folded, looking everywhere but the camera. The chairman of the board cleared his throat. We've asked Ms. Radley to join this emergency session following recent client withdrawals and public scrutiny. I smiled. Thanks for having me. Though I go by Grace Holden now. I shared my screen. Slide 1, a running ledger of every personal item sold, gifts they'd given me over the years. Slide 2, the full resale value, $46,550. Birkin bag. Heirloom bracelet. Corporate watches. Christmas gifts still bearing tags from hotel promo events. Just a sampling, I said lightly. I turned indifference into independence. My mother's voice cracked. You kept all those things just to sell them? I shrugged. I kept them to remember. But I sold them to survive. I clicked to the next slide. Slide 3, salary comparison, benefits tracking, documented discrimination. Charlotte scoffed. You think I didn't earn it? No, I said. I think you never had to. My father leaned in. You're destroying the family's name over numbers? No, I said calmly. I'm showing the world what those numbers always hid. I clicked one last tab. My resignation email. Scheduled. Timestamped. Sent 5 minutes before the meeting started. I'm no longer part of Radley and Associates, I said. I'm not returning. I'm not applying for a role. I'm offering you terms. They froze. You're offering terms, my mother whispered. I nodded. Option A, the Department of Labor completes its investigation. Clients pull their accounts. Press runs a legacy scandal headline. Option B, you accept Maluya Holdings as a partner. I lead the new investment division. You, Cynthia and Charles Radley, become strategic advisors. No executive power. No veto rights. The boardroom erupted. But no one interrupted me. I raised one hand calmly. There's one more condition. I'm not an employee. I'm a partner. Or I walk. The chairman looked stunned. And if we say no? I clicked to the final slide. A list of major clients, already signed onto Maluya. The Hendersons. Tran McCall. The Heller Group. All gone from Radley. All with me. The vote was taken. 6 in favor. 1 against. 2 abstained. It passed. My mother looked like she'd swallowed broken glass. My father bowed his head. Charlotte? She finally broke the silence. Wait. What's the password to the furlough file? I smiled. April 14th. All three of them blinked. Charlotte's voice cracked. That's your birthday? I leaned back. You were there when I was born. Then I ended the call. The screen went black, but I stayed seated. Not because I was tired. But because I needed that silence, the kind that fills you after your world finally stops spinning on someone else's axis. Marcus stepped quietly onto the deck. Dinner is ready, Miss Grace. Would you prefer the sunset table tonight? I looked out at the last golden line on the horizon. Yes. And please, a glass for my brother too. Seth grinned, already walking over. To new beginnings? To never settling again, I replied. 1 week later, I stood in a glass-walled office on the second floor of Maluya Holdings Regional Building, the Pacific breeze humming softly outside. On the desk in front of me sat a new contract, freshly signed. My title, Director of Strategic Investment, North America. The office was smaller than the one I had back at Radley. But here, every square inch belonged to me. No borrowed desk. No inherited space. No mother hovering in a glass tower above mine. Just me. The door opened and Matthew, the resort's general manager and now my direct supervisor, stepped in. We just got confirmation, he said, voice calm but deliberate. The Henderson account has officially transferred to Maluya. I wasn't surprised. For years, I'd nurtured the Hendersons like they were actual human beings, not just portfolio figures. I remembered their daughter's name. I sent a card when their dog died. I was the one who listened when no one else did. And now, that trust was paying dividends, literally. Matthew continued, we'd like you to personally present our sustainable investment model to our East Coast partners. Including the ones who used to sit on Radley's board. I nodded. Tell them to bring questions. 2 days later, I made an unannounced visit to Radley and Associates for the official board restructuring session. Seth came with me, now listed as an independent financial consultant. He carried a simple black briefcase and a silent confidence. We walked past the front desk. The receptionist's eyes widened but said nothing. Rumors had already spread. The Department of Labor investigation had made headlines. 3 major newspapers had run features titled, "The Forgotten Daughter Who Took Down a Dynasty." In the boardroom, my mother sat rigid at the head of the table. My father beside her, expression unreadable. Charlotte stood near the windows, phone in hand, probably updating a PR draft no one asked her to write. The board chairman nodded in acknowledgement. Miss Grace, he began, and then, correcting himself, Partner Holden. We're ready for your presentation. I plugged in my USB drive. The slides were clean, minimal, sharp. Strategy. Accountability. Fair wages. Growth through integrity. I made no appeal to sentiment. No mention of birthdays or old betrayals. This was about business, and reclaiming power through structure. But I knew exactly what I was doing. Because with each data point I shared, they realized something. I hadn't just left. I had built something better. And they had no idea how to stop it. When I laid out the new compensation model, with standardized reviews and a permanent audit committee from Maluya, my mother's hand twitched on the table. She had always controlled salaries like leashes. But now, every leash was cut. The final slide was simple. No longer Radley's daughter. Now Radley's equal. When the vote was called to finalize the partnership and restructure leadership, it passed with barely a breath of protest. Cynthia and Charles Radley were reassigned to non-voting advisory roles. Charlotte wasn't even mentioned. I gathered my papers and stood. Thank you for your time, I said. The board will hear from me again in Q3. Until then, I expect full cooperation from all departments. I turned and walked out without a backward glance. Back at Maluya, the air felt lighter. Like I had truly severed the last thread of obligation tying me to people who only saw me as convenient. That evening, on the villa balcony, I joined Seth, Violet, and Shanice, who had just been hired as Maluya's in-house wellness coordinator. Shanice was finally arranging flowers not for an event, not for a guest, but because she liked the scent of white orchids in the morning. "This is what real family looks like," Violet said, her voice quiet but sure. "We don't need matching blood. Just matching values." Later, I opened a small package Seth had left on my desk. A watch. Simple. Matte steel. Engraved inside, "I am, you claimed your own." I fastened it gently around my wrist. It wasn't gold. It wasn't flashy. But it was mine. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. By the following Monday, Radley and Associates was no longer the same firm. At least not in the eyes of the industry. Not in the way clients whispered. Not in the way the headlines twisted the knife. I hadn't spoken to my mother since the boardroom vote. But I didn't need to. The entire financial sector had already received the message. Radley had been built on polish and illusion. I had burned both. One afternoon, I stood beside Matthew at the coastal boardroom of Maluya's Pacific Division. He placed a thick folder on the table, confidential transfers, account closings, NDAs voided. All related to Radley's past missteps. "This," he said, "is what empire collapse looks like, when the daughter they underestimated decides not to play heir but architect." I nodded. And now we build forward. The next day, I opened my phone and stared at the home screen. I hadn't touched my public Instagram account in weeks. The one linked to the old me, the Radley me. The one Charlotte used to skim for content ideas. The one Mom monitored with an eagle eye, obsessed with optics. But I knew it was time. So I posted a video. No captions. Just a slow montage. Me sipping tea on the deck. Me laughing with Seth over wine. Violet typing in the shared office. Marcus opening the villa door with a slight bow. The sky. The sea. The silence. And at the end, a screenshot of the old password prompt to the furlough file. Enter password, _____________. Then a black screen with white text. It was April 14th. All along. The comments came in fast. Former coworkers. Clients. People I didn't even know. "You're my hero. This is what justice looks like." They remembered invoices, but not your birthday? I hope she never goes back. Within hours, the video had over 700,000 views. The story caught fire. First through finance gossip blogs. Then in women's business forums. Then TikTok influencers broke it down in real time. This is the woman who sold every fake gift her family ever gave her, and used the money to disappear. She made them remember her birthday by protecting the most important file with the one thing they never cared about. Even Usha sent me a clip someone had edited, a split screen of my mother's gala speech last year about Radley family values, overlaid with the video of me sipping champagne alone at sunset. The caption? "You forgot your foundation." I didn't share it. I didn't need to. But I saved it. Because deep down, I knew the war wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. That same evening, Violet forwarded me a new internal memo. The Department of Labor's findings had triggered a second wave of investigations, from ethics boards, from HR compliance watchdogs, even from Radley's own investors. Dozens of current and former employees had stepped forward, all citing discrimination, nepotism, pay suppression, and retaliation. "They're trying to plug the leaks," Violet said in her note. But this isn't a leak anymore. It's a flood. I typed back only one sentence. Let it cleanse. Meanwhile, Charlotte had locked down her social media accounts. A Vanity Watch blog published an exposé titled, "When Your Sister Sells Your Chanel and Outsells Your Image." The article outlined how Radley's visual rebranding strategy had failed, because the woman behind the curtain had always been Charlotte, not the firm's silent strength. Me. Lillian. Grace. Both. All of me. I leaned back on the villa's shaded terrace and watched Seth sketch logo concepts on his tablet. He looked relaxed, peaceful, a rare thing for him. We hadn't spent this much time together since high school. "This place," he said, "feels like we're rewriting our DNA." And maybe we were. Because the more we stripped away the name, the expectations, the noise, the more I realized how much I'd been holding on to a version of myself that was never mine to begin with. Later that night, Shanice joined us for dinner, barefoot, holding a tray of handmade dumplings. No title, no pretense. Just her, real and unedited. She smiled and said, "I don't know who built this table, but I'm glad it wasn't your family." I raised my glass. It was us. And no one else. And in that moment, I realized something even deeper than victory. I had always believed that my worth had to be proven. But now, I understood. You don't have to prove what was always true. You just have to stop letting others define it. It was just past 7 a.m. when the email hit my inbox. Subject, urgent, request for clarification on partner role structure. It came from my father. The man who once told me, "You're not made for the front lines. Your support." The man who hadn't uttered the word sorry to me since I was 13 and he forgot to pick me up from ballet recital. The body of the email was clinical. Full of jargon. But between the lines, it screamed, "We didn't think you would actually leave." They thought this was a phase. A tantrum. A vacation stunt. Maybe even a test of loyalty. But what they hadn't realized was this: I wasn't just gone. I was never coming back. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked out to the villa deck where Marcus was already waiting with a pot of chrysanthemum tea and a soft linen envelope. "This came by courier," he said with a bow. Inside was a note. Handwritten. Sharp, familiar cursive. From Charlotte. Grace. Or Lillian. Or whatever version of yourself you are now. You've made your point. Loud and clear. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad is barely speaking. And me? I don't know anymore. Maybe I never did. But you won. So what now? Do you want to burn everything down? Or are you just going to sit on your island and sip tea while the company chokes? We were sisters. Once. At least pretend you care. I stared at the letter. Not angry. Not moved. Just hollow. Because that was always Charlotte's angle, make it emotional when she lost control. But this time, I didn't owe her softness. I didn't owe her anything. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into a drawer with other artifacts of the life I used to lead. That afternoon, Seth and I finalized our newest pitch deck, one that didn't just target Radley clients, but Radley structures. Systems designed to suffocate innovation, reward appearance, and suppress dissent. The presentation was titled simply, "Quiet Power, Reinventing Corporate Value." And it was working. We had already secured 3 speaking engagements at female-led investment forums. Our green fund strategy had outperformed Radley's legacy portfolios by 6.4% in just 30 days. And our team? Still small, but growing, hand-picked, diverse, hungry, and empowered. Later that week, I was invited to an invitation-only panel on women who reclaimed the room. I wore a navy suit with no label. A ring Seth gave me years ago, just a band of silver. And my own name tag. Not Lillian Radley. Not Grace Holden. Just Lillian. Director, Maluya Strategic. The panel host introduced me last. And finally, she said, we have the woman whose silent exit triggered a corporate reckoning. The one who made password protection into poetic justice. Lillian, thank you for being here. The room applauded. I smiled softly. Thank you for not needing to ask who my family is to care why I'm here. Afterward, dozens of attendees came up to me, some in tears. Some trembling. All of them holding their own stories. Stories of being sidelined. Used. Dismissed. Forgotten. I listened. I hugged. I handed out business cards like lifelines. One woman whispered, I haven't quit yet. But today, I decided to start. And that, more than the headlines, more than the contract, more than the clients, was my real victory. Back at the villa, Marcus handed me another letter. This one from Violet. She had been hired by a new firm in San Francisco. As CFO. Her first executive role after 15 years in the shadows. Lillian. Your fire lit my fuse. I didn't burn down Radley. But I stopped letting them steal my oxygen. I sat down at my desk, tears brimming at the corners of my eyes. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was a blueprint. That evening, Shanice brought out handmade dessert, mochi filled with plum. She giggled. I watched a YouTube tutorial for this. Violet, now visiting for the weekend, lifted her tea. To messy starts and clean endings. Seth raised his glass. To Lillian. The only Radley who ever built something no one could take away. I smiled. To all of us. Because this family was one I chose. And that made all the difference. The morning air at Maluya Shores was thick with the scent of plumeria and salt. I stood barefoot on the villa balcony, holding a cup of ginger tea, watching the ocean drift into the sky. It had been 90 days since I walked away from the Radley empire. And they still hadn't recovered. Radley and Associates had lost nearly a third of their asset management base. The Department of Labor had issued a formal citation for internal wage discrimination, and 3 of their corporate sponsors had dropped support pending ethics review. An internal audit leaked to the press confirmed Charlotte had received over $40,000 in personal image reimbursements in one fiscal year alone. The new headlines were no longer about me. They were about them. And their house of cards was crumbling, not because I pushed it, but because I simply stepped out and let the wind do what it does best. I received a final notice that morning. An envelope from a private courier. Official letterhead. Radley and Associates. Inside was a single check. $1 million. A payout. A settlement. An unspoken bribe. At the bottom, one line. In recognition of your contributions to Radley's legacy. I didn't even flinch. Because here's what they still didn't understand. I was never part of their legacy. I had built my own. I handed the check to Marcus and instructed him to shred it. Then I walked into my office, closed the door, and called Violet. We're starting a mentorship program, I told her. For who? She asked. For the women still in the middle of what we already walked through. The ones still waiting for permission to stand. She didn't hesitate. Let's make it global. By the end of the week, we had partners in 6 countries. By the end of the month, we had stories pouring in, from Tokyo to Toronto. Women reclaiming their names. Walking out of toxic firms. Starting businesses. Starting again. Just starting. The story of Lillian Radley, the girl with the cupcake and the forgotten birthday, had turned into something so much bigger than I ever planned. And the best part? It didn't end in rage. It ended in rebirth. On the 100th day since I left Radley, we held a small celebration on the villa's private rooftop. No photographers. No guests in glitter. Just us, the team. Violet baked a lavender cake. Shanice made paper flower crowns. Seth played music off a cracked Bluetooth speaker. And I stood in the center of the deck, watching the moonlight settle into the sea. I've been thinking, I told them. We should rename the foundation. Seth raised an eyebrow. To what? I looked up. Thought about that sticky note from so many months ago. Let's call it April 14th. Violet smiled. A date no one forgot this time. Everyone raised their glasses. And in the quiet that followed, I whispered to myself, not out of anger, but out of absolute peace. I was never invisible. They just never looked closely. Lillian's story is a masterclass in what it means to reclaim your power, not through confrontation, but through clarity, confidence, and the courage to walk away. She didn't burn bridges. She built new ones. Ones she owned. Sometimes, to rewrite your legacy, you don't need permission. You just need to remember your own name. What did Lillian's journey make you feel? Have you ever been overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed by the people who should have lifted you higher? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge.